London, capital city of United Kingdom. General information. London, city, capital of the United Kingdom. Population. About 9 millions. Language. English. Currency. Britain's national currency is the pound sterling. London is an ancient name, already attested in the 1st century AD, usually in the Latinized form Londinium, for example. Handwritten Roman tablets recovered in the city originating from AD 65/70 include the word Londinio, in London. London, city, capital of the United Kingdom. It is among the oldest of the world's great cities, its history spanning nearly 2 millennia, and one of the most cosmopolitan. By far Britain's largest metropolis, it is also the country's economic, transportation, and cultural center. London is situated in southeastern England, lying astride the River Thames some 50 miles, 80 kilometers, upstream from its estuary on the North Sea. In satellite photographs, the metropolis can be seen to sit compactly in a green belt of open land. With its principal ring highway, the M25 motorway, threaded around it at a radius of about 20 miles, 30 kilometers, from the city center. The growth of the built-up area was halted by strict town planning controls in the mid-1950s. Its physical limits more or less correspond to the administrative and statistical boundaries separating the metropolitan county of Greater London from the home counties of Kent, Surrey, and Berkshire, in clockwise order, to the south of the river, and Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire, and Essex to the north. The historic counties of Kent, Hertfordshire, and Essex extend in area beyond the current administrative counties with the same names to include substantial parts of the metropolitan county of Greater London, which was formed in 1965. Most of Greater London south of the Thames belongs to the historic county of Surrey, while most of Greater London north of the Thames belongs historically to the county of Middlesex. Historically, London grew from 3 distinct centres: the walled settlement founded by the Romans on the banks of the Thames in the 1st century CE, today known as the City of London; the square mile, or simply, the city, facing it across the bridge on the lower gravels of the South Bank, the suburb of Southwark, and a mile upstream, on a great southward bend of the river, the city of Westminster. The 3 settlements had distinct and complementary roles. London, the city, developed as a centre of trade, commerce, and banking. Southwark, the borough, became known for its monasteries, hospitals, inns, fairs, pleasure houses, and the great theatres of Elizabethan London: the Rose, 1587, the Swan, 1595, and the world-famous Globe, 1599. Westminster grew up around an abbey, which brought a royal palace and, in its train, the entire central apparatus of the British state, its legislature, executive, and judiciary. It also boasts spacious parks and the most fashionable districts for living and shopping, the West End. The North Bank settlements merged into a single built-up area in the early decades of the 17th century, but they did not combine into a single enlarged municipality. The City of London was unique among Europe's capital cities in retaining its medieval boundaries. Westminster and other suburbs were left to develop their own administrative structures, a pattern replicated 100 times over as London exploded in size. becoming the prototype of the modern metropolis. Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace has served as the official London residence of the UK's sovereigns since 1837 and today is the administrative headquarters of the monarch. Although in use for the many official events and receptions held by the Queen, the state rooms at Buckingham Palace are open to visitors every summer. Buckingham Palace has 775 rooms. These include 19 state rooms, 52 royal and guest bedrooms, 188 staff bedrooms, 92 offices and 78 bathrooms. In measurements, the building is 108 meters long across the front, 120 meters deep, including the central quadrangle, and 24 meters high. The palace began as Buckingham House for the first Duke of Buckingham and Normanby in 1703. Later it was sold to George III and became a private retreat for Queen Charlotte. George III bought Buckingham House in 1761 for his wife Queen Charlotte to use as a comfortable family home close to St. James's Palace, where many court functions were held. Buckingham House became known as the Queen's House, and 14 of George III's 15 children were born there. George IV, on his accession in 1820, decided to reconstruct the house into a pied-à-terre, using it for the same purpose as his father George III. Decades later, King George IV began extensive renovations which continued to grow in scope and cost. In 1837, it became the main royal residence for Queen Victoria. Buckingham Palace has served as the official London residence of Britain's sovereigns since 1837 and today is the administrative headquarters of the monarch. The 19 state rooms at the palace are regularly used by the royal family to entertain guests on their state, ceremonial and official visits to the United Kingdom. These beautifully lavish rooms are open to the public every summer. Since then, the palace has often been at the center of state occasions and royal hospitality. It also survived frequent bombings in World War II, although the palace chapel was destroyed. Today it stands a symbol of the British royalty and their unwavering dedication to UK citizens. It is a popular place to visit, both for locals and international travelers. Be sure to visit at the right time of day so you can experience one of the most popular tourist attractions in London. The changing of the guards. Every day, the guards who watch over the Buckingham Palace are relieved of their duties with a ceremony and replaced with a new group of soldiers. Kensington Palace. In 1689, William III bought the Jacobean mansion Kensington Palace, originally known as Nottingham House, from his Secretary of State, the Earl of Nottingham, and commissioned Christopher Wren to extend and improve the house. Until the death of George II in 1760, Kensington Palace was the favorite residence of successive sovereigns. Queen Victoria was born and brought up in the palace, and news of her accession in 1837 was brought to her there by the Lord Chamberlain and the Archbishop of Canterbury. However, Victoria chose to reign from Buckingham Palace. It had been expected that Victoria would reign from either Kensington or St. James's Palace, but almost immediately she moved to Buckingham Palace and never again stayed at Kensington Palace. Queen Mary, grandmother of the present Queen, was born at Kensington Palace in 1867. The Duke of Edinburgh stayed there in his grandmother's apartment in 1947. Between his engagement and his marriage in 1912-14, the palace's state apartments were used by the London Museum, which again used the site, 1950-75, prior to the opening of the Museum of London in the central city. In the neighborhood adjoining the palace are grandiose 19th-century mansions, many of which are now embassies and the houses of diplomats. Kensington Palace continues to serve as a residence for British princes and princesses. Diana, Princess of Wales, resided there prior to her death in 1997. Today, the palace still serves two purposes. It's open to the public as a museum but is also the official residence for a number of select royals, who live in apartments in the palace and houses within the grounds. The most senior royals living in Kensington Palace today are the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who first moved there in 2013. At first, the two lived in the cozy Nottingham cottage, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's former home, too, but eventually set up in the spacious apartment 1A, which used to belong to Princess Margaret. They moved out of the Kensington abode in 2013, shortly after the birth of Prince George, moving to Anmer Hall in Norfolk in order to raise their children in more of a private location. But recently, the family have officially moved back to their Kensington Palace apartment full-time, in order to dedicate themselves to their royal duties. Their two oldest children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, also now go to school in London, and their youngest Prince Louis attends Wilcox Nursery School in London, so the family will be in the city for some time yet. Big Ben. Big Ben is the nickname for the great bell of the striking clock at the north end of the Palace of Westminster in London, England, and the name is frequently extended to refer also to the clock and the clock tower. The official name of the tower in which Big Ben is located was originally the Clock Tower, but it was renamed Elizabeth Tower in 2012 to mark the Diamond Jubilee of Elizabeth II. The tower was designed by Augustus Pugin in a neo-Gothic style. When completed in 1859, its clock was the largest and most accurate four-faced striking and chiming clock in the world. The tower stands 316 feet, 96 meters tall, and the climb from ground level to the belfry is 334 steps. Its base is square, measuring 40 feet, 12 meters, on each side. Dials of the clock are 22.5 feet, 6.9 meters, in diameter. All four nations of the UK are represented on the tower on shields featuring a rose for England, thistle for Scotland, shamrock for Ireland, and leek for Wales. On the 31st of May 2009, celebrations were held to mark the tower's 150th anniversary. Big Ben is the largest of the tower's 5 bells and weighs 13.5 long tons, 13.7 tons, 15.1 short tons. It was the largest bell in the United Kingdom for 23 years. The origin of the bell's nickname is open to question. It may be named after Sir Benjamin Hall, who oversaw its installation, or heavyweight boxing champion Benjamin Conte. 4-quarter bells chime at 15, 30 and 45 minutes past the hour and just before Big Ben tolls on the hour. The clock uses its original Victorian mechanism, but an electric motor can be used as a backup. The tower is a British cultural icon recognized all over the world. It is one of the most prominent symbols of the United Kingdom and parliamentary democracy, and it is often used in the establishing shot of films set in London. The clock tower has been part of a Grade 1 listed building since 1970 and a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. On the 21st of August 2017, a 4-year schedule of renovation works began on the tower. Modifications have included adding a lift, re-glazing and repainting the clock dials, and upgrading lighting and repairing roof tiles among other improvements. With a few exceptions, such as New Year's Eve and Remembrance Sunday, the bells are to be silent until the work is completed in 2022. In December 2021, the last scaffolding was removed from the clock faces, revealing the restoration work that had taken place since 2017. In April 2022, the gantry supporting the scaffolding was removed, leaving the tower free of scaffolding. The London Eye. The London Eye is one of the most popular tourist attractions to have opened in London in recent years, and it is often described as being one of the absolute must-do activities when you visit the capital city. However, how much do you really know about the London Eye? Most people look at the London Eye and assume it is merely a large Ferris wheel. as the world's tallest cantilever observation wheel. It is actually a lot more interesting than you may have originally realized. The London Eye was first built in 1999 in celebration of the new millennium. It was formally opened on the 31st of December 1999 by then Prime Minister Tony Blair. The idea was chosen from a host of entries into a competition held back in 1993 to suggest a new landmark to signify the turning of the century. The London Eye has 32 capsules, one to represent each of London's 32 boroughs. Each capsule is numbered, but number 13 has been skipped due to the superstition of bad luck that is often associated with the number. This means the capsules are numbered 1 to 12 and 14 to 33. The capsules are traveling at a leisurely pace of 26 centimeters per second, which is twice as fast as a tortoise sprinting. Tower Bridge, erected 120 years ago and located in the heart of central London. The aim of the utterly iconic Tower Bridge was to take the burden off nearby London Bridge as a crossing point for traffic on the Thames. But its exceptionally smart design also means that river-going vessels are able to pass thanks to its roadway splitting in two and rising out of the way due to its hydraulic technology. Plus, lest we forget, this building, one of the most famous and gloriously appealing bridges in the world, also features those unforgettable twin bascules, or Gothic-like, towers. Instantly recognizable and utterly irresistible. But that's far from all. For visitors to the bridge can now venture on to the high-rise walkways that straddle the bridge's bascules and look directly down on the pedestrians and traffic, both road and river going 42 meters beneath them. How so? Thanks to the glass sections that have been installed in two walkways floors. Both glass sections are 11 meters long and 1.8 meters wide, but don't worry. The panels of glass are definitely thick enough to take your weight. They each weigh 530 kilograms. Moreover, there's an exhibition in amongst the bridge's incredible more than a century-old cog work that details just how it works. How it's still able to split apart and rise so many years after it first opened. One of the city's 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The tower's biggest draw for many of its millions of visitors each year is undoubtedly, and unsurprisingly, the crown jewels. Comprising thousands of gemstones, this exquisite, glittering collection of priceless objects includes the 800-year-old coronation spoon, the extraordinary 530-carat Cullinan diamond set in the monarch's scepter with cross, as well as the iconic St. Edward's crown, the imperial state crown, the crown of Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother and other royal accoutrements often worn on state occasions. St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's Cathedral is an Anglican cathedral in London that is the seat of the Bishop of London. The cathedral serves as the mother church of the Diocese of London. It is on Ludgate Hill at the highest point of the City of London and is a Grade 1 listed building. Its dedication to Paul the Apostle dates back to the original church on this site, founded in AD 604. The present structure, dating from the late 17th century, was designed in the English Baroque style by Sir Christopher Wren. Its construction, completed in Wren's lifetime, was part of a major rebuilding program in the city after the Great Fire of London. The earlier Gothic cathedral, Old St. Paul's Cathedral, largely destroyed in the Great Fire, was a central focus for medieval and early modern London, including Paul's Walk and St. Paul's Churchyard, being the site of St. Paul's Cross. The cathedral is one of the most famous and most recognizable sights of London. Its dome, framed by the spires of Wren's city churches, has dominated the skyline for over 300 years. At 365 feet, 111 meters, high, it was the tallest building in London from 1710 to 1963. The dome remains among the highest in the world. St. Paul's is the second largest church building in area in the United Kingdom after Liverpool Cathedral. Services held at St. Paul's have included the funerals of Admiral Lord Nelson, The Duke of Wellington, Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, Jubilee celebrations for Queen Victoria, an inauguration service for the Metropolitan Hospital Sunday Fund. Peace services marking the end of the First and Second World Wars, the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer, the launch of the Festival of Britain, and the Thanksgiving services for the Silver, Golden, Diamond, and Platinum Jubilees and the 80th and 90th birthdays of Queen Elizabeth II.